what's going on? It's Preacher, and our warrior is now capped. All the drama is settling around the survival hunter, which is rocking the deeps at the moment. Good times, good times. Let's hope that gameplay improves a little bit. And now we're going to start continuing our melee series. The first thing we're going to do, jokes aside, is we're going to cover proper interrupting technique. Now, this isn't strictly for melee, of course, but it is the primary thing that melee are known for. Why? It's the easiest for them by a long fucking way and doesn't screw them up. And in fact, there's a DPS increase for several classes as well. Hint, hint, it's generally a melee job. Ha 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 ha, previous video where everyone mocked. But it is. As we all know, but tanks can do it, some healers can do it, and of course ranged DPS can do it. But primarily, particularly as you get further in the game, it's going to be a melee job. Now, interrupting might seem like something really derpy, like I don't need to know this shit. I would stick around because you'd be surprised how many people don't have proper interrupt technique at all and actually get screwed up. So let's start with the super basics. Have a really good place for seeing when a target is casting something. Interrupting is a massive part of the game. And you probably don't even realize it, or you understand that already. It's a huge, huge part of the game. Being able to stop someone from doing something very dangerous to you will change the entire face of certain dungeons. And you will quickly become one of the guys who goes, I didn't even know this mob did this. I had no idea that this happened on this trash because somebody was interrupting it. Or maybe you were passively interrupting it and didn't know what it did. So you need to be able to see when something's casting at you very, very, very easily. So as you can see there, I have it right in front of my face. If something's casting, I have an icon, I have the name of the spell and the time. And this is all going to become relevant later. So if you're new to interrupting, here's a couple of tips to get you started along your little journey to becoming great at this. And I will point out, I have been promoted in very top guilds because of my interrupting. Finding great interrupters is something all guilds want. They want to be able to say, when they come up against a boss that has something very important to interrupt, that they can say, you can do it. And we have the people to cover this. And you don't want to be the guy who always fucks it up because they don't want you in the raid. They don't want you. This is your job and you're unable to do it. We don't want you there. So find a place for it. And the first thing I want to do with your tip is, one, bind it to something very, very easily. And if you have alts or you just get used to your alts, make sure that that binding is interrupt for all of them. Whatever class or character you play, if it has an interrupt, it's the same goddamn button because you're going to program your finger to do this for the rest of goddamn time. This is it. For me, it's E. It's literally one of the easiest buttons I can press on my keyboard is interrupt. If I have two types of interrupt, so if I have Arcane Torrent or something like that, it's Shift E. E is my interrupt. No matter what happens in World of Warcraft from now, from the end of time, if my character has an interrupt, it is going to be on E. So whatever yours is, fine, find it, and make sure it's not something silly because you want to be able to be fast. You want to be able to be really, really fast. So moving your finger just a little couple of millimeters and being able to interrupt is very, very important. So the next tip to get you started on interrupting is, if you're not very good at it or you've never really considered it, is once you've got your cast bar somewhere where you can see interrupts properly, the standard bar UI is pretty garbage for this, is go and rock some heroics and just try to get used to interrupting everything you possibly can. Believe me, what you'll realize is if you use something like SCADA to track interrupts, is you're going to find that you do so many more interrupts than other people. It is ridiculous. You will be amazed at the sheer quantity of spells that go uninterrupted in World of Warcraft on a regular basis. It's insanity. What you should start seeing is you having something like 20 to 30 interrupts. Yes, 20 to 30 throughout a dungeon run. It'll obviously vary on dungeon and length. And everyone else being like 1 or 2. And often that's because they accidentally did it. People don't interrupt in this game. And it's tragic. It's tragic. You can save lives by interrupting regularly. And you will start to see that things go much, much smoother if you're interrupting properly. Okay, so that's like step 1. That's step 1. Step 2 is being able to be truly fast at it. Truly fast. A great example of this is Malkorok, all the way back from Cataclysm. Malkorok were the little imp guy who drank his potions, a little chemist who was in there, had an ability to AoE the entire raid. Now, a good interrupter could interrupt that spell before it literally did any damage whatsoever. That was the sign of a great interrupter. They could recognize the spell, which we're going to talk about that in a second, know what was coming, and then interrupt it. And the best way of doing that, of course, is similar to the healers with dispelling, is know it's about to happen. Know it's coming. It's coming up soon. It's my turn if you're in an interrupt rotation and being aware of that and then being able to react to it so fast, like split second fast. And the way you do that, of course, is very similar to dispelling, is know it's coming. So the first thing you want to do is be able to be super, super fast at interrupting. That's step 2. Be super fast at it. So it's literally the cast bar appears, you were ready for it, boom, went down. I recommend this as the step 2 because this is going to start educating you on which mobs do what, right? Which mobs do what, because a lot of you might not know which mobs cast what. So it's important that you know this and you'll start to remember it, and this will train you going forward. Okay, the next thing is really finding out what the fuck are you interrupting, right? Step 3, what are you actually interrupting? Legion has cottoned on to the fact that more and more players are getting used to interrupting. So what they've decided to do in Legion, more so than any other expansion, is give enemies a multitude of spells to cast. A lot of them aren't particularly dangerous. So what you'll find is while you're being super, super fast at interrupting, more than likely in the early days, you're actually interrupting something that's not a big deal, right? Interrupting just crazy stuff that's a little bit of tank damage, something along those lines. You'll actually find some mobs, specifically like Vault of the Wardens and Eye of Ashara, actually have so many spells at their disposal that in fact you'll interrupt them, and you could keep interrupting them with a few people, and they won't even melee. They can cast something else like pretty quickly. They'll cast some other spell instead. And often mobs that are like that, particularly in early Vault of the Wardens and in Eye of Ashara, they actually have a very dangerous spell in their arsenal, but they're not going to cast that first. They're actually going to cast it like second or third or fourth. And that's so that people who are better at interrupting can actually go, okay, I don't need to interrupt this. Yeah, you'll see these spells coming out and say, this isn't what I want to interrupt. I actually want to interrupt something else that's coming along. And that's when you really start to see the swing in the performance of your dungeons. You'll start to see this in Mythic Plus. You'll start to see this all the way throughout the entire game and into raids, is that you'll start finding things go much, much smoother. And previously, you might not have realized that. So what's step 4? Being able to interrupt as late as humanly possible. Now, there's some ideas behind this. When an enemy is casting a spell, they're not hurting anybody. They're not doing anything. Very similar to a player, right? A mage or a warlock. If they're casting something, nothing is actually happening to you. Nothing's actually happening to your tank, and nothing is actually happening to anyone else. Nothing actually happens until that cast finishes. So what you want to learn is to see a spell pop up, be able to recognize it either by the icon or the name, and because you were expecting it, and then go, okay, I'm going to interrupt this, but I'm not going to interrupt it now. And I want you to try and get used to interrupting things with less than a second remaining. WoW is really good from this. Now, MS is going to play into this, whatever your ping is. If you've got bad internet, it can be a little bit worse. But obviously, you want to be able to try and interrupt things with about 0.3 seconds remaining. The reason we do this is because that gives the map's maximum amount of uptime where that mob isn't doing anything to anyone. It basically doesn't exist. It's just a big blob of health at that point, and therefore it's just going to stand there, try and cast something for as long as humanly possible. Then you're going to interrupt it, and then it can start doing something else, which might be another long cast. And then you pair this up with a couple of people, and essentially you've got a mob that you can lock down for a long, long time because it's trying to cast something, and you are wise enough to be able to delay it and then interrupt at the very last second, meaning that for a long, long time it's not doing anything. You compare that to having a couple of bad interrupters, and that mob might have got 3 or 4 spells in that period of time because it was just casting and casting and casting and doing lots of damage, lots of nasty things, whereas now it's actually not doing anything whatsoever. A very stark contrast to what you'll have seen before. Other reasons for doing this and being able to interrupt as late as possible is, again, Blizzard's cottoned on to the idea that people are better at interrupting now. So a good example recently is, of course, Mythic Helya. Mythic Helya's Mistwatchers have a cast that is extremely long. However, every single time it's interrupted, they're going to cast it again, but faster, like twice as fast. It goes faster and faster and faster. Not only that, it actually shortens the time of the phases, but that's irrelevant for now. But what it will do is get faster and faster and faster. So in order to maximize our ability to kill this thing without it killing us, everybody in the interrupt order needs to interrupt as late as humanly possible. What you're going to find happens here is that as you move into higher tiers of the game, when someone asks you to interrupt, you will probably think they're a bit of a noob if they interrupt straight away. I'm serious, this is the switch you'll have. If somebody like says, Another good example would be the Archway with the large ghosts that cast the Torment thing. Obviously, Torment keeps stacking, but interrupting one of them won't clear the stack. You need to interrupt a few in succession while the debuff ticks down. So how do we maximize that? Well, a debuff needs time to tick down, so the longer that thing's casting but not actually casting the finished spell, the better. The better, the more chance you're going to have great success there. I've no doubt everybody listening to this has been into the Archway at some point and died to those things because they were getting interrupted, but they were getting interrupted very, very quickly, right? And all that happened was it only actually spent maybe half a second casting and then it just casted again. So the debuff had no time to run out. What we're doing now is interrupting very, very late and being able to maximize the uptime where this mob is casting things and then not debuffing you, which then leads to greater success. People don't die, etc., etc., etc. You're going to notice this. If you don't believe me, you're going to notice very quickly how much easier the world is. Now, some other things that are going to happen to this and other ways of using interrupts. I've given you proper interrupting technique there, but there are other ways we can use interrupting to help out our group and improve things, particularly in terms of interrupting mobs that are outside of the death ball. So if that's a new term to you, the death ball is what the tank tries to create. It tries to gather all the mobs into a very small location. We'll call that the death ball. And that means that the maximum amount of damage is going to be put out by the group onto that death ball, right? We want our AoE to be concentrated and be hardcore. Very important. We want to be concentrating it. Now, what you'll find is casters, as tanks have lost a lot of the ability to interrupt ranged mobs, won't come into the death ball. So if you've got two casters, they might interrupt one, especially if they're kind of like a newer tank who isn't used to like interrupting a mob at the start and then moving over to the one that won't move, things like that. Is that you'll have this death ball, but then you'll have this mob that's outside of it. He's not going to get hit by your cleave. He's not going to get hit by the living bombs. He's not going to get hit by other AoE generated by other players. What you can do is just drop out very quickly, interrupt it. The tank has aggro, and what you're doing is actually helping the tank out. He can't move because it's just going to separate the death ball. So you give that a punch in the chin, it comes over to the death ball, and therefore you've helped the group out even more. AoE is going to be better, they're going to die faster, all these kind of things. And what you're going to stop happening, which I'm sure you've seen so many times, is that you'll finish a big group of mobs, and then there's this one dipshit who's stood there on full health, right? It's the same thing DKs do with gripping in adds that are at a distance to try and get all this AoE concentrated. Interrupting is a huge, huge part of that, okay? So that's our first look at melee stuff, proper interrupting technique. Lots to go out there. Again, if you're very, very new, just get used to interrupting as fast as possible and doing as many as possible. And really do as many as you humanly can. Just do as many as you possibly can. And just check yourself out in the interrupt meter in SCADA or whatever it is you use. And you'll start seeing yourself way, way, way over the top. And then you'll be like, holy shit, there were loads of spells here that I didn't know to interrupt. And then I want you to try and progress that all the way to recognizing the names of spells, recognizing what they do, and then interrupting them as late as humanly possible. Once you achieve this, you'll be able to say, I'll interrupt it with 3 seconds remaining. Whatever the time may be, you can interrupt it as late as possible, as quickly as possible, or any time in between without issue. And you'll get a lot of confidence because you're also going to be training your muscle memory to, in fact, be able to press this button on a whim. Just on a slight thought, you'll be able to just press it straight away. So I hope you guys take that on board, all right? Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.